Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love.
If you love chilling mysteries, unsolved cases, and a touch of mom-style humor, Moms and Mysteries is the podcast you've been searching for. Hey guys, I'm Mandy.
And I'm Melissa. Join us every Tuesday for Moms and Mysteries, your gateway to gripping, well-researched true crime stories. Each week, we deep dive into a variety of mind-boggling cases as we shed light on everything from heists to whodunits. We're your go-to podcast for mysteries with a motherly touch. Subscribe now to Moms and Mysteries wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're going to start off with a review today. As I promised, when someone leaves a good review, we'll read it out. This one comes from Easy Money 99. All right, Easy Money, thank you. And this is what Easy Money writes. As someone who loves hardcore and choppers, this show scratches that itch. The paranormal is a nice bonus and thoroughly entertaining. P.S. was listening to Murphy's Law self-titled and had a wait a minute moment. What they are referring to is the intro, which is... the intro to the Murphy's Law, the first Murphy's Law record. And shout out to my man Jimmy G, my brother Jimmy G, from Murphy's Law, and for allowing me to use that music. But that said, let's get into it. If you want to support the show, all you got to do, all this content is free. It's always going to be free, right? First thing you can do is just share the show and leave a review. And sharing the show, obviously, that helps in so many innumerable ways, right? Get it out there. But if you leave a review wherever you listen, whether it's Spotify or Apple or Android, some of them you leave stars, some of them you can actually write up a review. That, the more people that leave reviews, that shows activity and it gets us boosted in the algorithm. So that helps in a lot of ways. Now, if you want to go above and beyond and be top tier supporter, you got to check out Patreon over at www.patreon.com/bigtruth. That's where my inner circle is, my inner circle of the cream of the crop of the listeners. Now, I love you all. I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean? But there's some people that are more equal than others, and that's the Patreon subscribers. So shout out to my Patreon subscribers. You guys absolutely rule. So go to patreon.com/bigtruth and find out how you can be involved over there. There's all different levels of patronage. They have their own little benefits and things like that. Now, if you happen to be in the unfortunate situation, we're going to take care of some business right now. If you need to be in the... I'm moving too fast. My mouth's moving faster than my brain. Actually, my brain's moving faster than my mouth. If you happen to find yourself in the unfortunate situation where you're in a motorcycle accident, there's only one thing to do. Call the Glassman Injury Law Group over at 617-777-7777. Easiest number in the world to remember. 617-777-7777. Glassman Injury Attorneys will be all over it like pit bulls. Pit bulls on some raw steak, gnawing at it, making sure you get what you deserve. Because let's face it, most motorcycle accidents aren't the rider's fault these days, with all these distracted drivers shoving a donut down their throat while they're looking at Instagram or posting on TikTok or some dumb thing. All right. So, or you just go to Glassman, JeffreyGlassman.com, or on Instagram at Gotta Get Glassman. Enough said. Now, even if something happened up to 3 years ago, you can go back and retroactively get things in motion. Now, obviously, right, a lot of people that listen to this are very old school and would like to handle some things in a street justice way. In this day and age, that ain't going to get you far. So get them where it really hurts. Hit them up and get their insurance to compensate you for your injuries and get your bike repaired or replaced. All right. Enough said on that. Now, if you happen to need some artwork for your house, your apartment, your condo, your garage, your man cave, your she shack, any of those places, your cubicle at work or your prison cell, same thing. different location, but whatever. I'm just kidding. Padded cell, any of them, right? Go check out Tattoo Flash Collective at tattooflashcollective.com, on Instagram at Tattoo Flash Collective. They sell Tattoo Flash, obviously. So if you go to a tattoo shop and you need some new flash, the Cherry Creek ain't selling anymore. Actually, it's back in style again. But that new school stuff ain't selling anymore. Then get some new flash. Breathe some new life into your shop. Go to tattooflashcollective.com. But besides that, if you need any kind of posters, prints, all different sizes from postcard to big, big, huge posters, they got you covered over there. And it's a collective. So it's run by tattoo artists. And they work with the cream of the crop tattoo artists from all over the world, and they break them off. It's not some corporate stuff. It's like grassroots stuff. My man Johannes and his partner run it, right? So, and Johannes, he was the first guest on this show. So that said, that's enough. Go back and listen to that one if you haven't heard that one. Go all the way back to one. TattooFlashCollective.com. Use the promo code Big Truth at checkout. Get 10% off your order. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you get even more off your order. Now, I own a motorcycle shop, and it's just, it's me and my homie Ryan doing things over here. So support the shop. Come on by. If you need some work done and you're in New England, come on by. 13 County Road, East Freetown, Mass. We're a full brick and mortar motorcycle shop. We're not a lifestyle company. We are the lifestyle. We do this all day, right? 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And most of the times I'm here for a little bit on Sunday too, but I get the doors locked so people leave me alone and I can get some stuff done. But so whether you need a oil change or a full custom motorcycle built, any kind of customization, any kind of upgrades, any kind of whatever you need, just give us a call or come by. Or go to chopperhead.com, spelt in the most masshole of ways, which is CHOPPAHEAD. So, and if even if you don't get a bike, if you like what this show's about, pick up some swag. You can get t-shirts, hoodies, everything. All our t-shirts, men's t-shirts, are on Bayside American-made t-shirts. So, you know what I mean? We rep. To find more information on the show, just go to bigtruthpodcast.com. And I invite you to hit the store link and get some show swag. We got t-shirts and hoodies and tank top. It's a merch fulfillment company, so there's all kinds of wacky things there. The banner that's behind me on this podcast, you could get one, and you could do your own bootleg podcast and make fun of me. I don't care. Go ahead. Do it. BigTruthPodcast.com. And without further ado, I've been waiting. We had this one scheduled for a while, so I was glad to get this going tonight. We're going to go on a wild ride with my homegirl, Karin Wilkinson, so keep it locked.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Once again, we have liftoff. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Big Truth Podcast, and I'm stoked to have my friend Karin Wilkinson here, who is has a really I don't want to say crazy. I don't mean it in the insane way, but it's a really insane story of lifelong UFO abductions. And she's also going to challenge what your conception of what a UFO is. And we'll get into it. She's also an author. She wrote the book Stolen Seed, and I have this copy. I have it here. I can attest that it's a wildly interesting read, and you guys should check it out. Without further ado, we don't even need a longer introduction. I want to give you the most time. I know you're on a limited time frame, but Karin, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and the watchers, and the watchers of this podcast, not the watchers in the general sense. And the watchers already know you.
They know who I am.
Yeah, but and tell everybody a little bit about your book, and then why don't we just jump right into your story, because it's so interesting and wild.
Well, thank you, Truth. I am just honored to be here with you tonight and be on the show. You have such a great show. So I'm just so happy to be a part of it and to be here. So my name's Karin Wilkinson. I am the author of Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. And the book is an account of my lifelong experiences of being taken against my will by non-human alien entities, and who and what they are, and an explanation of what I think their end game is. And I approach it from a couple of different perspectives, from the perspective of someone who's experienced it, and also from a perspective of what do the historical documents say about it? What do the biblical documents say about it? So I'm not here to push a religious belief or anything like that on anyone, but I am here to say there is so much explanation out there for who and what these things are, and that they've been around longer than we have. And there's a lot to share and learn about it for those who are interested in who and what they are and what they're doing. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, and that's the book. And I'll let you go ahead, and then I'll continue with that.
So why don't we just dive right into your story? I know you've been having these experiences since you were a child, and why don't we just jump into it right from the early days, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. It's funny because I never expected to write this book. I certainly never expected to share my experiences. There's such a stigma out there for anyone who says, I've been taken, I've been abducted, and we're not crazy people. There are thousands upon thousands of us, people with the exact same experiences that I have had, that I have reached out to me, that I've met, who I've spoken to personally. I mean, so many of us. It knows no cultural boundaries. It's across the entire world, every continent, every country, every race, religion, creed. It is something that is worldwide and extremely common. And we're not crazy people. We're just normal, everyday, your neighbors, your friends, your teachers, anyone. It really can affect anyone. And affects so many more people than you would know, but people are afraid to speak about it. And I understand that. It's a scary topic to talk about because it comes with a lot of backlash. People are like, you're crazy. That never happened. I know it happened. I know it happened to me. And so does everyone else who's had these experiences, who remembers. Many people don't remember. And that's okay too. It's different for everyone. But after I had near-death experiences, I went through some PTSD therapy, and that helped me to deal with a lifetime of this traumatic memories that I had. And once I was able to deal with these memories, then I was able to share. And that's when I met L.A. Marzulli, and he encouraged me to write this book. And that's how it came to be. But it started from my earliest memories. There's not a time in my life I don't remember these things happening to me. It was terrifying, not being able to look out a window at night most of my life, knowing what was most likely going to be looking back at me or what I'd seen so many times. And a typical, from about the age of 5 on is when I have the more clear memories of being taken and what happened during those abduction experiences. And typically I would be, woken up in the middle of the night, and either a light would be coming in the window, or there would be just this low vibrational hum. I would always feel this just evil presence in the room. Before I even saw them, I could feel their presence. And I know you understand that from our previous conversations. And sometimes they would be in the room. Sometimes they would be outside the window, but there would be 2, sometimes more, of what people describe as a typical gray alien, the bulbous, hairless heads with the giant black almond eyes, and the eyes didn't move. They looked like a screen. They were just fixed. And mouths that didn't open, really skinny necks and long arms. And they were only about maybe 4 feet tall. And they all look the same, these particular ones. And I have a lot of information that I've gathered and my own theories as to why these entities are the way they are, but these are just one of many. They would be in my room, and I would be as a kid, I would just be terrified. I mean, sometimes I would wet the bed. I was so scared. I would try to hide. There was just nowhere to hide. I'd have the covers over my head and my eyes closed. I'd try to hide under the bed. I'd try to hide anywhere. There's just nowhere to hide from them. If there was someone else in the room and I would try to yell out or scream, they wouldn't respond. It's like everyone else in the house would be in this deep sleep state. And then I would be put into a state of what I call waking paralysis, which is different from sleep paralysis, where I was already awake, already fully aware. But then suddenly I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't defend myself. Levitated off of a bed or wherever I was. If I was, it didn't matter where I was. They would take me from anywhere, home, someone else's home. It didn't matter.
So it would happen even if you were
and levitated.
Oh, sorry.
Towards a closed window.
I think we got a little bit of a lag here because you were cutting out a little. But so even if you weren't at home, they would find you like if you were at someone else's house?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like a sleepover or camp or a grandparent's house, or it didn't matter. Yeah. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was daytime or nighttime either. They have this ability to manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that we don't understand. They are so far advanced from us. Dr. David Jacobs calls it future physics. And now I'm starting to hear that term used by members of our government and other people who are in this field of UAP, UFO information, and, starting to catch up to what we've been talking about for years, that it's just so far ahead of us. Because these, based on what I feel, but I'm going to back up and go back to where I was, and I can jump forward to that again. At that point, I would be levitated off of the bed and up to a ceiling or through a closed window. And it would feel like this massive vibration almost. And my body felt like it was made of almost like ball bearings is the only way I can describe it, going through solid matter. It's like everything just changed and I would just go right through. And I mean, I remember being little and seeing details on a ceiling, like curling wallpaper or bugs in a light thing or etching on a light fixture or the tops of picture frames, things that I would never see as a little child from my vantage point in great detail. And, my mind would just go to those things trying to dissociate from what was happening to me. I started to dissociate from it at a very young age because it was so traumatic. And I do believe that's why I do have the memories I have. And speaking to so many other people who have had similar experiences, those who remember also were dissociating from it the same way I was. And I think that aided in our ability to remember, because if we weren't emotionally or, logic connecting with them, then they weren't wiping our memory the same way, because I wasn't tuned in, and you can't reach someone who's not really there. And I think that had a lot to do with it, why I have memories where some people don't. But it's not just me. There are many people who do remember these things. At that point, I would be, taken, and I would usually not have, at that point, I'd be like put into a sleep state, because I would wake up then sometime later, I have no idea how long later, sometimes on an exam table, surrounded by other types of entities, or in a room with other humans waiting for whatever they were going to do to me, sometimes at a bank of what looked like elevator doors we would get in. And at this point, I'm still with these little grays, they're like, they're almost like we call them a meat suit. They're just, I think they are like an avatar created to come and get the people to kind of carry out these tasks, these more menial tasks for these other non-human alien entities, because they're all the same. They all look the same. They don't have mouths that open. They don't have eyes that move. I think that they're created to hold things like they could hold AI, they could hold another entity, they could hold a demonic entity. And that gets us into Nephilim and all of that. And I don't, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
So, and we should have a conversation about that. We probably won't have time tonight, but I am more than happy to come back and talk about that in much more detail, because that is a huge part of this. But at that point, I would get in these elevators that just went down and down and down. And then when I was little, I'd call them the sideways elevators, because I would get sometimes on, I think it was like a high-speed type tram system. In the 60s and 70s, cars, trains, everything made a lot of noise when you traveled. These were silent. So I didn't realize what it was. It seemed like an elevator to me as a little kid, because they would go up at an angle or down at an angle, but they went side to side as opposed to up and down. They went in different directions. And that would also take me to wherever I was going. I was in these underground facilities that were massive. They were huge, bigger than football stadiums and airports and coliseums, all those things together, just giant rooms and small rooms and hallways and stairwells and confusing labyrinths of hallways and rooms and places.
So just
and
real quick.
If you think about underground, that's a whole other subject.
Oh, sorry. We have a lag. So like sometimes when I start a question, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's like it's taking a second for you to hear it. But when you say underground facility, do you think you were underground here on the planet, or do you think you were taken somewhere else, whether it's another dimension, off planet, something like that?
Right. I think I was here generally, and I say that because there were humans and non-human entities where I was taken. And so I do believe, I don't have any knowledge of ever being taken to another planet. I don't think these entities are from other planets. I don't think there's a plurality of worlds. At this point, these entities, these are a race of beings. I believe they are the fallen, created by God. God created races of entities before us. We know this from the biblical references. And a third of those fell. And they were created before us. They were a race of beings created by him to serve him. And I think that, or I know that for me, the entities that I was, that were engaging with me were created by him, because when I confronted them with this information, they were forced to leave me alone. So I had that confirmation, and so these entities that were taking me, we weren't going to other planets. I mean, yes, they are interdimensional, in my opinion. They are capable of space and time travel in ways that are very hard for us to understand, but and it's very hard to explain. But most of the time, I just was underground in these massive facilities.
Yeah. And how often were you being taken when you were in that age range? Like, was it fairly regular, or was it just like?
Yeah, fairly regularly. I couldn't even count the number of times, if I had to, that I was taken. And I wasn't, keeping track.
Yeah.
But it was happening all the time. I mean, it just seemed to me as a little kid, it just felt like it was constantly happening. And coming back with bruises or marks from needles or burn marks and things like that. And little kids get bruises all the time. Things happen. And I tried to talk about it. I tried to tell people. I tried to tell my parents. I tried to tell the kids at school. I tried to tell the nurse. I tried to tell anyone who would listen. But there was not a language for me to explain it either. I mean, aliens, grays, things like that. We didn't have that vocabulary. It was the little ones, they're coming to get me, they keep taking me, they're hurting me, they're bothering me, those types of things. And, to a parent or a teacher or someone else, that starts to sound like maybe someone at school is bothering her. Maybe she's just having nightmares, different things like that. And they were warning me not to talk and not to talk about it. And one night when I was taken, they did a thing. We call it a screen memory. Some people are familiar with this. It's where today it would be like putting on a set of VR goggles, because it looked and it felt real, but it wasn't. They were showing me an image of my family being marched out in front of me across the yard. It was in the backyard of my grandma's house. And I write about this in detail in the book. So I'll just do really high level here for time's sake. And they showed my family being killed in front of me and said, this is what's going to happen if you talk about it. As a little kid, that's going to shut a little kid up, because a child doesn't want to be responsible for harm coming to the people they love. This is a common tactic I've found out since, used to control children who are being used or abused in any certain way. So I'm watching my language, because I know that I don't want to get you censored for things.
Oh no, it's fine. This is a anything goes podcast. You can. Okay. Yeah, there's no worries. No worries.
There are some where they're like, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say this, you can't say that. Like I've been on Coast to Coast, and boy, the rules were really strict.
Yeah, well, Coast to Coast is a much different operation than a podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, that's when I really kind of that's when I really dissociated. Shortly after that, I realized there was no way out of this. I couldn't ask for help. Even when I tried, no one understood me. I had some sort of a breakdown. They found me, I was probably 6 years old, huddled in a bathroom stall at school in the corner. They couldn't get me out. They had to call my mom to come and get me. She coaxed me out of the bathroom, and I just kept saying, I want them to stop. I want them to stop. What? The little ones, they keep taking me, it's that kind of language.
Yeah.
She thought maybe it was a kid or something. She took me to the doctor. They did an exam. They're like, whatever has happened to her, she's little, she'll forget. She's young, she'll forget, And this is the 60s and 70s. It was a different time.
Yeah.
Plus, what did they have to go on, right? So after that, I just realized I was on my own. And the best way to protect myself was to just zone out. And I had a life that was normal. And then the other part of me dealt with that stuff, and that's where you kind of dissociate. And it was really hard. It was terrifying. They'd drop me off after they'd take me back home. And sometimes my pajamas would be on inside out, or sometimes they'd just be at the foot of the bed or in another room. Sometimes, they put me in another room. Sometimes, I would be so scared I would just go crawl underneath my parents' bed and sleep there for the rest of the night because I was just terrified. And I didn't know what to do. As a little kid, and for others I've talked to who've had similar experiences, it's terrifying because you don't know what to do. And that just continued on throughout my life. And I was able to stop it eventually once I learned, once I understood, God explained to me, showed me who and what these things were. Then I had the tools to call on him to stop it.
Yeah.
And, that was amazing. And then through the therapy, I was able to deal with these memories. The therapy wasn't for these memories. It was for something else. But it, for that near-death experience, because it was traumatic in itself. But it helped me learn how to deal with it. So I'll stop there in case you have questions, because I know we have a little bit of a lag here.
Yeah, no. One thing I did want to ask, you had mentioned the grays that you said were avatars, the little grays that were like avatars for whether it was an AI or some kind of spirit or demon, but or alien. But you said there was other types of entities there. What were some of the other, besides the small grays, what were some of the other types of entities that you encountered?
Sure. I kind of group them into a couple of categories. There's so many, and they all were very different, but there are the ones that look kind of like these little grays, but they are all different. There's some are taller, some are shorter. They had eyes that moved, and they had facial expressions, whereas the little grays, the avatar ones, their faces didn't even move. And they made noises and sounds, although they didn't speak. Still, they did make a lot of noises and sounds. Communication was always done through what I call like mind speak. They did not use verbal language the way that we do, but there was mind speak that was very clear and very easy, and just always kind of back and forth with any of them. And then there were the ones that looked like reptilian, and very different kinds in there as well. Some really large and some much smaller. Just so many different, specifically, they're like people. They're different like people are. Sure. There were insectolan types. They were really the most freakish of all, because some of them had heads that look like a hammerhead shark almost. There is one that reminds me of a kangaroo in just the way it moved and the body shape. Those are two animals I cannot even look at. Yeah. There are a lot of things that I have trouble with because of this. It's funny because there's so many correlations to things that we have here that to compare them to. The insectolan types were always off. I used to, when I was little, call them the corner sitters, because they would often be kind of off observing. They seemed like they were in charge. No one gave me an org chart and said, here's our hierarchy. But you could kind of tell that there were some who were more authoritative than others, and some were more just doing the grunt work. My handler, who I write about quite a bit in the book, he was reptilian, but he appeared as human most of the time. He had the ability to change how he looked. It was almost like looking at I can't think of the word, but when they show you someone
Holograph?
on stage who, holograph. Thank you. Word just escaped me.
I get that.
Yeah, it was
all
almost
the
like
time.
looking at a holograph. It would change, and then you'd see him just as in his true form. But he was with me most of the time. And I always thought that was really unique to my situation until I started doing this and talking with other people. And then I realized, no, most of us who were taken had one specific entity who was around and with us most of the time. And so I thought that was interesting to find out, because I never realized that was not just me.
Yeah.
But when I was little, I did think this happened to everybody. I really did, because I saw other humans there. There were other kids there with me when I was little. Excuse me.
You had mentioned too that there were human workers there. Like what were the humans that were working there? Not the children not the children or the people that were being abducted. Like what were the people that were like the humans that were like helping there doing?
Sure.
Like,
yeah. They weren't allowed to talk to me.
Yep.
And I wasn't allowed to talk to them. There were some that were wearing things like lab coats, like a doctor almost or a scientist would wear. Some of them were in military outfits. Some were in like suits and ties. A lot of them were in these outfits that look like kind of smocks, like a smock shirt and pants, not quite scrubs, but like these beige, really nondescript, all the same kind of outfits. And I don't know why they were in those. I don't know what they were doing or what their role was there. But I do know that they would use us, the abductees, and do things to us to warn them, you don't want this to happen to your family members, to your wives, your daughters, your sons, your whatever. And they would show what would happen, and they had to watch things happen to us in order to keep them quiet. So clearly they were working together, and I really believe it's just government programs or things, something like that, some kind of, black, dark programs that are going on, that have been going on since the time of probably the Greada Treaty, which I write about as well, because, agreements have to be made. You can't just take someone. The spiritual realm is very legalistic. There must be an agreement. You must say, yeah, you can take me, or give that permission for a child to be taken. Yeah. And so there's sort of a blanket agreement that was given for the U.S. for the Greada Treaty in exchange for technology and information. And then as, family members, we had a lot of Masons and things like that in our family. And I think that's where some of those permissions for me also came from. I don't have any proof of who gave the permissions, but clearly the permissions were given. That's definitely clear. But so those humans that were there, I mean, if you think about it, if you're working for a government program or for a high-tech company, well, now today it would be high-tech, back then, or something like that, and they say, hey, we've got this, great promotion for you. You just have to sign this NDA, and you can't talk about the work you're doing. And you're like, this is great. Before you know it, then you're involved in something like that, and there is no way out. Because they don't tell you what you're going to be doing before you do it. And I could tell that it bothered these people. I could tell that they were horrified. You can see it on their faces, but they couldn't say or do anything, for fear of their own families. And I get that. I understand why no one helped me. Because I get that question a lot. Why don't you think anyone helped you? Why didn't anyone, if there were humans there, why didn't they do anything? They couldn't, they couldn't for their own safety. I don't think that their lives had any value to these entities at all. They were just being used, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I know, and I've read your book, and I've heard you on other shows and stuff. I know things progressed too, like when you got older and you still were taking like in your teens and stuff. I don't know if you want to delve into any of that, but it got a little more sinister, a little more horrible.
Oh, definitely. Yes. It got more physical abuse in nature, and very violating and very uncomfortable. Those are very hard things to talk about for anyone who's been through it. But it's unfortunate. And I do believe, and I know it wasn't just me. Yeah. And it's very hard to talk about, but I write about it because I want other people to know they're not alone. this happened to me too, and it's happened to other people, and there is a way to stop it, and you're not alone. And, it is not, you're not crazy. It did happen, and it's okay. You can heal from this, you can move on from this, and you can stop it. And I think that's really the message I was trying to get across with a lot of the book.
Yeah, sure. Just a quick, cause I know you've, so right from the rip, like the first person I had on the show was a guy, Chris Pittman. And he's been on the show Ancient Aliens and the Bridgewater Triangle documentary and stuff. Years ago, a couple years ago, he came on, and he was like one of the first people I knew that talked about these things, not as totally as extraterrestrial, but as some kind of non-human intelligence. He wasn't sure what it was. He's like, he can't say it was an alien, but he felt like it was something else. It was just some kind of non-human intelligence. And they would start to mess with him in his daily life, like not just like, in a situation where someone's taking, I don't think he was ever abducted, but they just started messing with him in his like day-to-day life. Did that ever happen with you? I've meant to ask you that. And because when I've heard you talk before, I don't know if people have asked you that, or I didn't hear it. I haven't heard anyone ask you that. I know obviously the abduction scenario is obviously more than enough for anyone to deal with, but like,
right? Yeah.
but in your waking hours in day-to-day life, had there ever been any interactions, or did they ever like kind of mess with you in any way during like, just like at work or like, just out socially or something?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. They will attempt, it's hard because they can't physically be in our atmosphere and in our space easily, if at all, depending on what form they take.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of limitations in that. But they absolutely have. And there have been attempts on my life. There have been all kinds of crazy things that have happened, because of this, and because I've talked about it. That puts you in a whole nother place. And because I was able to stop them, trying to get me to come back. The handler, I called him Toby, from the time I was really little. So, he came back to me not long ago, a year or so ago, a couple of years, I guess, trying to get me to come back and to, work with them. And because they try to convince you when you're taking that, they try to convince you they are benevolent space brothers, that they want to save the earth, that they want to do this, they want to do that. Benevolent beings don't kidnap little children against their will, don't rape people, don't mutilate cattle and humans, don't steal fetuses from your womb. Those are not the actual actions of a benevolent space brother. If they wanted to provide us with information, cures for this or how to help the planet with that, they could just do that. It doesn't require terrorizing people and hurting people. But they wanted me to be a part of that, to buy into that. And he tried to get me to come back. He looked horrible. He was in his reptilian form, but he was this just dark, almost brown, matte green color. He looked like he was dying, and he said he was dying, and he needed me to help him and to come back and be there, trying to get my permission for them to take me again, basically, in a roundabout way, and trying to pull on my sense of compassion. I love animals and humans and anything living, and I'm going to help something if it needs help. But I was not going back to that, and I said no. In Jesus' name, no. And the second, Jesus left my lips, he was gone. But they have come back to try to get me. The children that showed up at my bedside that I write about, that was, it was probably 30 years after, so they would have to been about in their 30s, 20s, 30s.
Actually, before you talk about, do you want to, for people that aren't familiar with the book, do you want to kind of tell that's part of the story? I know that could be a tough part to talk about, but it's a
very hard part.
It's a really heavy story there,
It is, and I'll try to do a really short version because again, I know we're pressed for time. But so when I became of childbearing years and I was married, I got pregnant. I was thrilled, very excited, elated. Went to the doctor, confirmed the pregnancy. Back then, you did blood tests and things. got to, hear heartbeats, got my prescription for vitamins and all the things. And about 3 months in, I woke up in the middle of the night in extreme pain, but I had not passed anything. I had not lost a baby at home or anything like that, but went to the hospital because I was in so much pain, and it was debilitating pain. And went to the hospital, and they could not find a heartbeat. And so they did an ultrasound, which we didn't do a lot back in the day. I'm a little older. And they didn't see a baby in my womb. And so, they're like, ma'am, are you sure you were pregnant? I'm like, yes, of course. You can call my doctor. You can, here's, get my records. I was pregnant. They're like, well, you sure you didn't lose this baby at home? I'm like, no, nothing came out of me. I would know if anything passed,
Sure.
right? So they did what's called a D&C, which is dangerous to do for a young woman because that can affect your ability to have more children. But they did a D&C, which is where they clean out your uterus to make sure whatever is left behind from a miscarriage or, a fetus is so that you don't get sick or, and to find out what happened. And they came back after that and said, there was nothing in my uterus. It was clean. There was no fetal tissue, nothing. They couldn't explain what happened. My pregnancy was just gone. There was nothing in there. And I still felt pregnant. Your body changes quite a bit when you get pregnant for a woman. And that was just devastating. I couldn't warn my baby. I didn't know what happened. And what do you say? What do you say to the doctors? Oh, I've been taken my whole life. I think I know what happened.
Yeah.
They'll send me up to the psych ward. I can't even talk about that to them. They were not having discussions in the hallowed halls of Congress about these things at that point. Since then, reports have been released admitting that the government knows that there are these unexplained missing pregnancies, that they know about this. I put it in the book, the reports in the book. They know about so much more than is shared with us, and so much information out there is misleading and is not truth to what is really going on. But back to what happened to me. So this happened several times. It got to the point where if I got pregnant, I wouldn't even go to the doctor until after like the 3rd month because it was too hard. It was too traumatic. It was too devastating. And if I just ignored it, then I wouldn't have to deal with it. It's just pretending it's not there. It's just avoidance. It's a terrible way to do it, but it helps. And so this continued happening. I even got my tubes tied at one point, and it still happens after that. Nothing stopped it.
Yeah.
I was part of a breeding program, a program where they were utilizing my eggs and it's not, it's not something that's unheard of apparently. And, I was very surprised to find out that there's so much information about this out there, that it wasn't just me, At one point I was taken, and the only memory that I have allowed to surface, I have a lot of memories that I really don't want to allow to surface. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
But one of these pregnancies, I was taken, and I remember being walked. It was in this underground facility, and a part of it I had never been in before, that I didn't remember being in before. And I was taken down this hallway, and this hallway was lined with what looked like aquariums in a pet shop, just floor to ceiling, very high. And in these, it looked red, but I think that was just the backlighting. I don't think the liquid in them was really red, but it looked kind of red. In them were fetuses at different stages of development. I don't know if they were human or chimeras or animal or whatever. They didn't look fully human, but I remember trying really hard to concentrate on what I was seeing in these tanks. When I was taken, there's this thing we call UFO brain fog. There's people have different names for it, but it's like walking and thinking through molasses, basically. And it inhibits your ability to run, to hit, to scream, to even think clearly when you're being taken. It's just a control mechanism that I was under. And that happens. Other abductees report the same exact thing. Anyway, so we get to the end of this hallway, and there's a door on either side, and then the hallway continues on without the tanks. And they open the door to the right, and it's a room the size of kind of a large closet. There was a woman in there on the floor imitating childbirth, and she had what looked like a baby, but it didn't look fully human. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I was just shocked by that in itself. And then the entities, I think it was a gray and a Nordic with me at that time, hand me a baby. And they say, this is your baby. It's a good baby. Hold your baby. And I keep saying, this is your baby. It's a good baby. It's a good baby. I'm like, and I look at it and I can tell it's mine. Just that mother instinct kicks in. I can see that it's mine, but it's not, it doesn't look fully human. The eyes are really big. It's very almost reddish purple in color, and it's very small, and it's very compact, and it's not moving or squirming around like a baby would. And I remember holding it up to me and expecting it to kind of cuddle into me, and it didn't respond to me at all. And I'm just like, what's wrong with my baby? What's wrong with this baby? And I'm freaking out. And, my mama bear instincts kick in. Those claws came out. And I'm like, well, I'm going to take this baby home, and I'm going to take care of it because it's mine. And they're like, no, you can't take that baby home. I'm like, oh, yeah, I am. It's any mom will tell you that instinct, or dad, that instinct kicks in, and you're going to protect that child. And I was taking that baby home. And at that point, they put me out. They put me under. I was just turned off like a switch. Wake up in my room and in my bed, and hysterical because I could still feel that baby. I could still smell that baby. I could still see that baby. It was still, even just the smell of it, it's like your own kids. It's just like any other child almost, but it wasn't. It wasn't human. Didn't have any sense of like a normal baby would have. Just that love, that cuddle, that wasn't there. I just remember being so upset. Oh, that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to experience through them, for all the other physical trauma that I've been through. The emotional trauma was the worst. And after that, I wanted, if I had any more, I wanted to know where they were, if they were okay. I wanted to fix them. I figured they were half human. I could fix them. I did not yet understand what a Nephilim was. I did not yet understand that whole process. I did not understand that it was a seed war from Genesis 3:15, where it sets up that seed war in the Bible. And that's something else we can talk about. Yeah. But I wanted them, and I prayed for them. I asked God, I really want those kids. I wanted them. After I had stopped the abductions and learned how to do that, how to just call on God, call on Jesus, and they had to stop. They couldn't touch me at that point. It was another attempt to get me back. I woke up in the middle of the night, and there were three entities standing beside my bed. I thought initially and immediately it was my boys, because they looked similar to my boys, but I realized they're too short to be my boys, and all my boys weren't living at home at the time, so it couldn't have been all of my boys. So I tried to wake my husband up. I'm like, honey, who is this? I'm like, and he won't move. He will not wake up, no matter how much I yell his name, how much I'm shaking him. So I turn back to the boys. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's you. You're here. I was just like, kind of thrilled. But I'm looking at them. They're probably between 4 and 5 feet tall. They're all wearing what looks like gray hoodie sweatshirts, kind of. It was really dark in the room, so it was very hard to see them clearly. And so it's covering them. All I could see was sort of their faces. Their eyes looked very, very dark. I don't know if they were black-eyed kids, but I think that that's exactly the time frame that they would have been conceived, and the type that was kind of being created at that point in time. I think that's what they were. And they didn't speak verbally, but they did mind speak to me. And I'm like, so I'm like, what's wrong? What's the matter? What do you want? And they're like, you have to come with us. And I just felt this palpable evil coming off of them, just anger, hate. Like, it was, you could almost touch it. It was so heavy. And I'm like, that's why I kept saying, what's wrong? Why are you so angry? No, I'm not going with you. And they're like, you have to come with us. I'm like, no, I'm not going with you. And I started to feel my body being lifted off the bed, levitated. And I'm like, oh no, in Jesus' name, no. And I said it so matter-of-factly. It was just me going, not this again. But the second I said Jesus, my body went straight back down on the bed. They're gone. My husband sat straight up in bed. He's like, what? As if I had just tried to wake him up. And they were gone. And it was closure for me. It was very sad for me because I realized they didn't seem to have a soul. They didn't seem to have any love, any compassion, there was nothing there. I could see that they were mine. I could see that resemblance, but I couldn't feel anything from them. And, I really believe only God can give a soul. Now, I will not say whether or not these entities could be redeemed or whether they have any, place in God's kingdom, because that's not for me to decide. But I didn't feel that. And I didn't feel any love. It was just, it was harsh. It was like looking at a rattlesnake. I mean, it was terrifying. And at the same time, exhilarating, because I was like, and when they were like, you have to come with us. I'm like, no, you can stay here. I was even like, you can just stay here. But no, it was wild.
Yeah. So if, this leads into like the bigger situation, the bigger, not question, but the bigger, topic here is like, what do you think is going on? But like, before we even get into the whole, like, the whole program of why they're doing this, but like, can you tell me a little bit about the kind of how you came to find out, like, so at some point you must have thought maybe these are aliens, or what are these? Like, they're saying they're posing themselves as, benevolent space brothers and this and that. Like, tell me about the evolution of your thought and like how you figured out more of like what was really going on. Like, how did you come to the conclusions that you came to, and then how did you learn, like to the method to like you said, calling upon the name of Jesus to make all of this stop. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about that, like evolution and like the process behind that? And then if there's time, I know you got limited time, like maybe talk about the whole end game of what's going on here and maybe how it ties into modern times, and like like you said, the climate's different now, where we got all these like congressional hearings about disclosure and this and that. Like, like maybe we could briefly tie like how some of this stuff wraps. And if we don't get to all of it, we'll do it the next time. The next time we talk.
Yeah. If your listeners are finding this interesting, I would love to come back and spend more time with you. Absolutely. So it's funny because I always, I grew up in a family where we went to church, and I was exposed to that, into the Bible, but we weren't taught, in these churches, the whole Bible. We were taught the parts that get butts and pews, the parts that are happy and comfortable, for lack of a better word. And when I was 18, I found a church where I gave my heart to the Lord, and I found, just a really lovely, a really good place with that, and learned a lot. But I still wasn't taught about the whole Bible. So while this is going on, I'm still being taken. And I realize at this point, as I'm older and there's more information, these are aliens. They're UFOs. I'm believing what they're telling me, that they're benevolent space brothers, that they want to help the planet. But at the same time, I'm terrified because they're doing awful things to me, and trying to reconcile this, but at the same time, just shoving it all down and not even letting myself deal with it. After my near-death experience, I had such an amazing, beautiful experience, and I won't go down that road today because that is a huge conversation to have. But it led to me really looking into almost any and every kind of spiritual and religious belief there was, learning, reading, trying to figure out everything, because knowing at this point God is there. We do go on now. What's the right direction? What am I missing? And I looked at everything. I I can't say I looked at every single belief system out there, but quite a few of them, and spent some time going down that New Age road and different things like that. And then I realized I'm not a co-creator. I'm not a God. God is God. And he just brought me, and I prayed every day, and I'm just like, God, open my eyes, help me to see. I need to know what's going on here. And he just led me down a path to truth. And I'm just remember reading the Bible, seeing it in a completely different way. And then, him just providing me with the resources and the answers to really see it differently and understand it. Once I started reading the Bible again, I realized it's all in there. I mean, it's, as L.A. Marzulli calls it, it is the guidebook to the supernatural. These entities are in there from Genesis to Revelation. There is so much information about them. I'm reading it and I'm going, I know what that is. Oh my gosh, I know what they're talking about here. This starts to make so much sense. And then that's when I had that revelation. You have the same creator I do. You have to answer to him too. So that means I can call on God and he can take me out of this situation. And that was it, and then they were very unhappy once I figured out that they were lying to me, that they are the fallen. They are the ones that, they are the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the little g gods, the sons of God. They are, through our history and through almost every race, religion, country history that you can find, you're going to find references to them and who they are and what they've done. They're not just in the Christian Bible. They're everywhere. And that's how I was able to stop it, because God led me to that truth of who and what they were, and that it's just in there. And then that led me to, L.A. Marzulli, and learning more and more from him and others, and just learning more about the truth about what is in our ancient texts and the extra canonical books of the Bible as well. There's just so much good information out there. If you read it with open eyes, with fresh eyes, and you really look at it, don't look at it as some boring sermon. Look at it as the exciting information that it is. You've got talking donkeys and chains just falling off of people, and people standing in the middle of fires, and people walking through walls, and, just to name a few little things, chariots of fire. It's all in there. It's all in there. And so that's kind of how I got to that place. That's a very abridged version, but it's kind of how I got to that place.
Yeah.
And, I'm so grateful for that, and that I was able to see it. And there's just so much in there. I mean, you look at Genesis 3:15 when it's there in the garden just after Adam and Eve fall. And he says, your seed will be at enmity. He's talking to the fallen, the Satan, or a Satan, that your seed will be at enmity with the seed of the woman. And he's talking about Jesus, will crush your head, and you, talking about Satan, will bruise his heel. That sets up the seed war. From that point on, it is a war to corrupt the human bloodline, to stop Jesus from being born. He gets born anyway, then they try to kill him. Well, that works out, in our favor, because now we live in the age of grace. It's a dispensation of grace, right? So, and it's just something that's been going on since then, and it's still going on today. The late Dr. Chuck Missler, said, when asked what the end game was, he says, Satan's outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. And he's not wrong. Whether it's hybrid entities, like there's just so many references I could make to all of this in such a short time, though. But that's exactly what's going on, to lead people away from the truth, make people believe these fantastical things like these are our space brothers. They're here to help us. Like I said, I can't get behind that with the things that they've done. These are not benevolent actions. There are good ones out there. Yes, absolutely. There are good angelic beings out there. I've experienced them. I even write about some of that in the book too, because I want to share the good. There is light and there is darkness, but we are not equipped to be able to tell the difference, because it's just like a bad guy, bank robbers and murderers and rapists and carjackers. They don't walk around advertising what they're going to do. And neither do the dark ones, the fallen ones. And they're smarter. They've been around longer. They're much more powerful than we are. And we are warned not to mess with them. And we really have no business messing with them, because they're so much further advanced than we are.
So What's your take on people that practice things like CE5 and all that, like where they're reaching out to try and talk to, what they think is extraterrestrials? Do you think that's giving them permission to like the permission they need to invite this stuff into their life or their
Absolutely
situation?
100%. Yep. You hit that nail on the head. And, you don't want to invite an evil entity in. Can attach to you, can mess with you, your family, your friends, your loved ones. Why would you bring something like that home to your family? But people don't know, because they're told this is safe. This is fun. Let's all go do this. Let's all go, meditate and invite them in. That is so dangerous. And now there's a new children's movie out by Disney Pixar teaching little kids to do this, where the little kids, one wish is to be abducted by aliens. And I'm thinking anyone who has actually been taken is going to see that and be like, why would someone want that torture in their lives? There are people who say they've had great experiences. When I have listened to their stories, even talked to some of them, the only part about it that's great is that they're saying, well, they told me it was great, but they actually were quite traumatic in nature. So, I still can't get behind kidnapping little kids and murder and torture and kidnap and rape. Still can't get behind those things. Those are not benevolent actions. You want to share good stuff with us? Sit down, share that information. You can do it in a better way, but not that way. I just can't. I can't condone that.
Yeah. So, from your experience, when you see all these things coming out with like UAPs, whether it's like the Tic Tac one or the Go Fast or Gimbal and all that, like when people seeing stuff in the sky, what do you think that is? Do they operate in craft or is it like?
Yeah, they do. Those are their vehicles of conveyance. They have to travel just like anyone else or anything else. Yeah. And I really like the way that Lou Elizondo describes them in his book, how they travel and how they operate. He's hit that nail. From my experience, he is the first person that seems to have described it as accurately as more accurately or close to accurately as can be described. Yeah. It's hard to understand because it is so advanced, but he describes it very well, how they travel, how those work. And yeah, absolutely. You are seeing these vehicles, and some of them can be the good angelic beings. Some can be the fallen. And like I said, you can't risk your life on being able to tell them apart. You really can't. So that's why you can't call on them. I've had interactions with benevolent angelic beings. They were sent to help me. They did not interfere. They didn't hurt me. It was just a very positive, amazing experience. It's like running out of gas on the side of the road and someone shows up, puts the gas in your tank. You say, thank you very much. And they're gone. And you just have a great experience, a really lovely, amazing, good, experience of someone just trying to help you.
Is that one after your operation?
Yeah.
When they came.
Yes. And I write it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that I have that in the book. And we can certainly talk about that again too sometime.
Yeah, that's a wild story that, we definitely will have to bring up next time. I know I know you had like an hour. We're almost there. What else would you like, for people that are just hearing this the first time, like, what would you want to convey or, tell people is the important stuff here? I know we've gone through a bunch. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up today?
Sure.
And there'll definitely be a part 2, and I'm inviting everybody who's listening to, always shoot a message and if you have any follow-up questions and stuff, and then we'll make sure we address that next time you come on. But
definitely. Yeah. Send the questions in. I'd love to answer those questions.
Yeah.
The thing is, UFOs, as Ellie Marzulli says, they're real, burgeoning, and not going away. They are there. They are, our congressional leaders know that they're there. There are programs for it. There's so much information out there about it today. The stigma still exists, and that is unfortunate. The stigma that says anyone who talks about this or says they've had experiences with this is crazy. We're not crazy. We're just normal, average, everyday people. We're not crazy. We've just had extraordinary experiences. And there are some of us who are willing to talk about it. And I understand how difficult that can be. But it is real. They are really out there. There is more than us. It's not just us. God created this amazing universe with lots of other entities besides us in it. We happen to have, books that tell us about us, but not about the other ones. And you got to remember that no matter what, God is in control. We are all his creations. He's in control. And that's just the bottom line. He's the one, the guy. So, we can all have different belief systems and call him by different names, but it doesn't change that we all have one creator. And I just encourage people to be very, very careful. There's a lot of misleading information out there. There's a lot of information that's not necessarily 100% true. There's a lot of this, 3 truths and a lie going on out there. There's a lot of people who think that they're helping, but they're actually doing more harm than good. I'm not disparaging anyone who has different thoughts and beliefs on this than I do. I encourage anyone who has, different thoughts and beliefs. Good. You get that out there. Everyone's entitled to that. I will listen to yours and you listen to mine, and that's fine. We don't have to agree. I'm just saying what I'm saying based on my personal experience and what I've spent, the 10,000 hours studying since then. But there's a lot of information, so be very careful. Take your time, research, look at all the information that's out there, and make your own informed decision as to how you feel about it. And above all, pray for discernment, because God will give you that, and that's really important. And there are ways to protect yourself if you feel scared or in danger. And you can send me an email if you have questions. Just go to my website. There's a contact me page. Send it that way. I don't get through messages on social media because there are so many. It's impossible for me to find the ones that are actually people who want to reach out and ask a question. So if you want to reach me, just go to my website, KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com. It's on the screen here, and I'm sure you'll have it for the show notes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you can just send me an email. And I, if you've tried and I haven't responded, it just means I didn't get it. So send another one, because email's not perfect. They fall through all the time. So please try again, because, I'm happy to answer questions if you have them via email.
Great. And one last quick, this might not be, if I'll ask this, and if there's a quick response, like, or we can leave it as a teaser. But I know I was listening to you on another podcast, and I'm not sure, I can't remember which one it was, but you said, being an experiencer, but also doing all the research you've done into it since through life, like you said, 10,000 hours, it's given you the power to kind of or the ability to know, like when these news reports come out about UAP sightings and stuff, to tell which ones are real and which ones are fake. In your opinion, and we don't have to get deep into it, but what have been some of the ones that you say, yeah, that one was legit, what would have been some of the legit ones, of recent, or, going back to Roswell or before?
Right. Quite a few of them are legitimate. It's some of it is just by looking at it. Some of it's a feeling. I'm not the end all expert in it, but I'm usually right on. And it's just because I can feel it. I can feel it when they're around. We were on vacation with Ellie and Peggy Marzulli, and we were looking up we were just nighttime. We're out on the porch just chatting, enjoying our vacation. And I'm like, I feel it. There's one up there. I can feel them. I can feel them when they're around. And everyone looked up, and sure enough, there's a disc going across the sky, and it's so camouflaged against the night sky, you wouldn't have noticed. And if I hadn't pointed it out and seen it, there's just I'm just been around it so much that there's just this kind of tuned in feeling that I get when they're around. And it's a really strange feeling. I can't even describe it. It's not like a normal emotion. It is just strange. But yeah, I can, and even seeing videos and stuff, and I'm not saying I'm right every time, but I'll quite often be able to tell if something's legit or not, just from the way it looks, what I've seen personally, what I've experienced personally, if it lines up or if it feels right or wrong. So, between experience, education in the subject, and then just intuition, I put those 3 together, and usually I can come up with an answer.
Okay. And have you, I know you said most of your experience was, in some kind of underground base. Had you ever felt like you or have any memories of being on any kind of craft or anywhere else, or just in the kind of the base there?
Oh yeah, I do. And I write about that as well in the book. And there's an interview with LA where I said I don't have any ship memories. And what I was referring to in that one was of them landing
Yeah.
like in the backyard or anything like that when I was being taken, those kinds of things. So that was a different reference we were making in that one. But yeah, oh, absolutely. I do. And I write a bit about it. It's very, and I really feel the ships are alive. They're some sort of living organism. And it's just, yeah, they really do respond and react in a way a living organism would. I'm not saying they're human. I'm just saying there's some sort of a living organism. You can find some of, I'm in a couple of L.A. Marzulli's documentaries. I got behind me. Hold on, sorry y'all for reaching behind me, but this is the current set that's out. This has like all 10 of the UFO documentary movies in it, and it is, and let's see, number 4, 6, and 10. I think you'll find more of my story in there as well. So if you want to see more, you can find these at lmarzulli.com, where you can find my book as well. But so there are different ways, and you can find interviews like this one, and I'm happy to share. I'm not everything in the book I'm 100% willing to talk about. I'm not trying to get people to buy the book. I'm willing to tell you about all of it. I'll just read it to you.
Yeah. No,
it's not it's not trying to sell books as much as just to provide information.
Sure.
And hopefully that information will help, and to provide it from a different point of view, from the point of view of someone who has had these experiences, and from a biblical point of view, from what does the Bible say about it, not a religious point of view, but a biblical point of view, which is very different. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely. One last quick question, and if the answer is yes, we can get into this on another episode. But given your experiences and that you've come out and talk about these things, and you've written about things, has anyone from any kind of government agency, either above board or like a black agency, have and if you can't talk about it, you can't talk about it, but has anyone from any of those type of agencies contacted you and tried to debrief or have a conversation with you, or things like that?
Yeah, that's kind of a long answer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's yes, I'm saying that could be another episode. I
haven't had any Men in Black show up at my door, but I've had other things. So, and more, kind of strange, very strange things. So yes, and no, no Men in Black, but yes, some strange encounters.
Okay.
So yeah,
all right.
It's not initially. It wasn't well received for me to be talking about this, but now that has relaxed to the point that I think anyone sharing this kind of information and sharing the truth about what's going on is actually helping the agenda to slowly release. We're not going to get full disclosure because you won't ever get all that information in one place. It's too segmented. It's out with too many people and in too many different departments. So you'll never get all those pieces in one place. However, those of us who are sharing certain parts of this information, I think, are actually working towards their agenda at this point. And I'm not saying their agenda is good, but it is good to get the truth out there. And what we've noticed for myself and others who have had issues in the past, those issues have gone away. So we must be working towards their agenda of sharing information. And this just helps them do that.
Okay.
From what we can tell, that's the only reason it seems like things have just completely just let up.
Yeah. All right. Well, I definitely want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, and we'll definitely do something else down in the future. I do actually one quick question that I can't believe I asked. Like you said, I think this might have been before we were recording. You were talking about you're writing another book.
I'm working on another one.
What's what's kind of like the story of that book? Like, what are you writing about?
Right. I'm writing to expand on some of the information from the first book. A lot of it is to really to dispel some of the things that are out there that are misleading, not necessarily 100% truthful. So to shed more light on the truth about who and what these things really are. Okay. And on a couple of other things that I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag yet, but I've been researching quite a bit. But yes, for the most part, it's going to really just offer a lot more insight and a lot more truth to what's really going on in the UAP non-human alien entity arena. and who and what these things are. So I'm excited to get that going. We're working on getting this one on an audiobook and on Kindle, and hopefully out on Amazon, because right now it's still exclusively at lamarzulli.com. And so that'll be, once we get that through, then I'll be able to get this second one out to everybody. And I'm really excited to get that out, because there's just so much information to share. Yep. Just a wealth of information out there. And I just really want to help people have a place to go to get the truth and the real information about what's really going on, because it's a little confusing out there right now.
Sure. Any expected, is there any, are you working against any deadlines or anything, or when are you expecting to have it out?
Mm-hmm. I don't have a release date yet. Okay. So as soon as I do, I will absolutely let you know, Truth, for sure.
Absolutely. So you can check her out at KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com. You can get her book at lamarzulli.com. And if you're driving and, don't get off the road to write that down. It'll all be in the show notes, and we'll have links up there. And I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. It's been it's a wild ride, and thank you for sharing all that with us.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to all your watchers and listeners. Y'all are great. And like I said, if you want to hear more, send those questions in, and I would love to come back again. Thank you so much, Truth. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm going to end this, but I'm not hanging up. So hold on one second.
Okay.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love.